أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Verily, our praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek His aid, and we ask for His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from the evils of our own actions. And whomsoever Allah guides, none can misguide. And whomsoever Allah leaves astray, none can guide back to the correct path. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. We testify there is no deity worthy of our worship except for Allah, who is alone, no partnership, and never has and never will be another. And we bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the last and the final prophet of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Thank you for joining in for our Sunday discussion. We will be continuing on with our reading of and then discussion afterwards of Mohammad, Akram, Nadwi's Al-Muhaddithat, the women scholars in Islam. So we had left off last week at page 149. So we're about a couple of pages in. I'd say one third way in, maybe a little less, in chapter number 6, women's role in diffusion of the knowledge. So we're reaching the manners of the women scholars here. So with that, let's go ahead and continue. Bismillah. So the sources that record the work of the Muhaddithat of later centuries do not provide much detail as to their manners, how they did their work. They are described not specifically, but generally as pious, virtuous, deeply learned, intelligent, generous with their time and their wealth, and despite teaching for most of the day, of astonishing patience and forbearance. Also, about some of them, their rank in the field of hadith is mentioned either in the form of a title such as a musnida, or by quoting the judgments about them of famous students. By contrast, the scholars from the generation of the companions and their successors were far more present in the social space they had to be for their knowledge to be passed on to many when they themselves were relatively to the students few in number. And more specific accounts of their qualities are mentioned in the sources than is the case for the women teachers after them, who modeled their manners and character on theirs. The study of hadith texts and their chains of authority has many technical elements suited to those with an academic bent. That said, the Sunnah, which that scholarship is meant to serve, is not an academic pursuit, but a way of living. The scholars of hadith, men and women, were aware that as a responsibility for accurately preserving and transmitting the knowledge that was with them, they carried a responsibility to transmit to their students the best manners in thought, speech, and action. They had to be mindful that they were passing on what had reached them of the teaching of God's messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not what might suit or serve a political or sectarian bias, nor what might improve their standing in this world. The best of the scholars were content with moral authority and kept clear of the temptations and burden of political power. Insofar as women were further from those temptations, they were able to preserve a virtually flawless record for integrity and truthfulness in their reporting and their personal conduct. An excellent model of the virtues of the Muhaddithat is the Tabi'ah al-Darda. Ibrahim ibn Ablah narrated that a man came to her and told her that a certain individual had criticized her before the Caliph Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan. She said, "If we are rebuked for something that is not found in us, then very often we are also praised for something that is not in us. It is wonderful how gently she criticizes the one who sought to bring her into the caliph's disfavor without needing to say that she has no awe or dread in the caliph's rank and power." In fact, Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan used to attend her class in Damascus to learn fiqh from her, and he sat as among her other students. Also, Ismail ibn Ubaidullah has reported Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan was sitting in the rock of Jerusalem, and al-Darda was sitting with him teaching. When the adhan of Maghrib was called, he stood up and she stood up leaning on Abd al-Malik, and so they remained until he entered the mosque with her. Then she sat with the women, and Abd al-Malik went forward to lead the prayer. Darda commanded such respect that she had achieved the humility that comes with taqwa, wariness of Allah. Arwan ibn Abdullah narrates, "We used to come to the assembly of Darda and remember Allah there. She was, in addition to teaching, famously relentless in devotions. Yunus ibn Maysara reports the women used to worship with Darda, and when they became weak from standing, they would lean on ropes. An intensity of worship is also reported of other women teachers. Hafiz Silafi narrates from Abd al-Rijal, Fityan ibn Nusrullah al-Azdi, that he said, the mother of my children, i.e. my wife, narrated to me that she saw Khadija bint al-Farqi Abi al-Abbas al-Razi many times praying the whole night and not sleeping except when overcome by sleep. And the teacher's work was a sacrifice on the path of God, and they attended to their students' needs with the same care as a mother does for her children. Uthman ibn Hayyan says, we ate food with Darda and we omitted to praise God. She said, oh, my children, do not omit to season your food with remembrance of God. Eating and praising God is better than eating and being silent. Abd al-Rabi'a ibn Sulaiman, ibn Umayr, ibn Zaytun reports that Darda would write the wisdom that she taught me on my slate. We guess that he was too young to have learnt to write himself, and he also reports that she would say to him, learn the wisdom when you are little or when you are young, then you will implement it when you grow up. And Sulaiman ibn Amir says, I set out intending to journey to Jerusalem, and I passed by the home of Darda. She gave me something to drink, and she gave me a dinar. And this spirit of generosity, giving up the wealth as well as time, is a consistent and stable characteristics of the Muhaddithat. Musa ibn Abdullah says Aisha bint Talha narrated to us, and she said that the people used to come to al-Mu'minin, Aisha, from every city, and they would write letters from their cities. And I would sit before Aisha and say, Khala, aunt, that this is a letter from so and so and a gift from him. Then Aisha would say to me, my child, answer him and reward him. And if you do not have anything to reward him with, I will give you something. And then she would give me something for him. And some of the women were so engrossed in teaching that they devoted their whole day to it, holding extended sessions almost without rest. One muhadditha, renowned for stamina through all-day sessions of teaching, was Sit al-Wuzara bint Umar ibn al-Munaja, and she was popular in Damascus for teaching al-Bukhari Sahih, then invited to Cairo, where she taught in the Great Mosque and other venues, her lessons being attended by notable men of the city, including its scholars. And she lived beyond the age of 90 and was still teaching on the last day of that long life. SubhanAllah. And then Hanbi, a student, says to her she was steadfast, patient for long sessions of teaching. And the reason for such prolonged sessions was that students had often traveled great distances and wished to hear and read many hadiths in large compilations and in the shortest period. Excuse me, and in the shortest period. That needed exceptional endurance on the part of the teachers, as often the students attended in large numbers. And Al-Luhanbi says about another of his women teachers, Zainab bint al-Kamal. She was devout, pious, and generous, and she narrated a lot of books, and the students crowded around her to read to her large books. She was a fine character, patient. Very often she would read to her most of the day. She was noble and kind. Ibn Rafi says about her, she taught big books and she was easy in teaching, loved the people of Hadith, and she was kind and noble. And Awan ibn Abdullah reports about Darda that he once asked her, have we wearied you? And she said, you weary me? Uh, I have sought worship in everything. I do not find anything more relieving to me than sitting with scholars and exchanging knowledge with them. And revising with students was necessary to establish the knowledge securely in their minds and their hearts. And Al-Dhahabi says about his teacher, Zainab bint Abd al-Rahman, that she was particularly good in revising. And sometimes, as a break from the serious work of studying hadith, muhaddithat would narrate interesting stories to relax their students. Tet al-Fuqaha al-Hamawiya used to do this. And there is a precedent for it in the accounts that we have of the companions, who might sometimes joke with their students. Abd al-Rahman ibn al-Aswad narrates, my father used to send me to Aisha as a child. I used to go to her beyond the curtain, and when I became an adult, I came to her and called to her from beyond the curtain, O al-Mu'minin, when she does the bath, when does the bath become compulsory? And she said, so you have done it, O Luca, and in answer to my question, when the private parts conjoin. And if the students erred, they would sometimes correct them with gentle admonition, sometimes with severity according to their need. Yazid ibn al-Asam narrates, I and a nephew of hers welcomed Aisha when she came back from Mecca. We had jumped into the garden of Medina and picked its fruit, and she was told about that. She turned to her nephew, rebuking him. Then she scolded me and said, do you not know that God has brought you up in the house of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? By God, Maimuna has left, i.e., died, and now your rope has been thrown onto your shoulder, so you're without a guardian and must guard yourself. Listen, among us, she was among the most weary of God and most caring for her blood relatives. An example of appropriate severity is this response by al-Darda to a serious failure of manners in one of her students. It was reported by Ibn Abi Zakaria al-Huzai. We went out on a journey with Darda. Then a man joined our company. Darda asked him, what is preventing you from reciting the Quran and remembering God as your companions are doing? And he said, I have memorized only one surah of the Quran, and I have repeated it so often that I have let it go. And she said, is the Quran let go? I will not keep company with you either. You go ahead of us or come after us. And the man mounted his camel and left. And Ismail ibn Ubaidullah narrates, Darda said to me, O Ismail, how can one sleep if he has 100,000 under his pillow? Ismail said to her, rather, how can one sleep if he does not have 100,000 or 10,000 under his pillow? And she said, SubhanAllah, I see you will be tried by fortune in this world. And Ismail was indeed tested by getting fortune in this world. Zayd ibn Aslam narrates that Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, the caliph, once invited Darda, and she was a guest in his house. And one night, he got up in the night and called his servant, who came a little late. Abd al-Malik cursed him. And in the morning, Darda said to him, I heard you last night cursing your servant. I have heard Abu al-Darda say that the messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, the cursors will not be intercessors or witnesses on the day of resurrection. Next is teaching unpaid and accepting of small gifts. Most of the women taught without asking for or taking payment. However, they would accept from their students what they unasked could give as a gift. As we know, one of the things regarding characters for Muslims is that we cannot refuse a gift. Uthman ibn Hayyan reports from Darda that she said, one of them will say, O God, provide for me, but he knows that God does not rain gold or silver over him. Rather, he provides people through each other. So whoever is given something, he should accept that. And if one is rich, he should give to the needy. And if one is poor, he should use that for his need. Ibrahim ibn Abi Ablah says, I saw Darda in Jerusalem sitting among poor women. A man came and distributed some money amongst them. He gave Darda a fals, a copper, and she said to her servant, buy camel meat with it. And she said, is not that money sadaqah? And Darda said, it came to us unasked. And the sources record many instances of Muhaddithat who were needy, and when the students came to know of that, they would help them to the extent possible for them. And Al-Shahawi says in his account to his teacher Aisha bint al-Zayn, she became very poor so much that he stayed in the ribat of al-Zayni ibn Muzhir for a time, and she accepted a little from her students. About his teacher, Surah bint Umayr al-Hamawiya, he says, she narrated a lot of hadiths. The imams of hadiths heard from her, and in terms of volume, I studied with her what is beyond description. She was righteous, with little wealth. That is why we used to help her. She was marked by intelligence, good taste, love of the students, patience in her teaching. Next, regarding the number of their students. So, among the women scholars, there were those who had a small number of students and those who had a huge number. The huge number of narrators from Al-Mu'minin, Aisha, have already been mentioned, and to illustrate the scale from the later period, I've listed here in Table 2 names of those of the students of Shuhada bint Abi Nasir, Ahmad ibn al-Faraj al-Baghdadiyya, who were or who later became famous as scholars, jurists, qadis, and aesthetics. And after that, to show how heavily attended some of the Muhaddithat's classes could be, I present a copy of and then a transcription of the names of the students given on the attendance record, the Sama, of the class of which the most famous teacher out of 14 teachers was Zainab bint al-Kamal, and the class took place in the first of Rajab 718 in the Jami of al-Muzaffari, Kaisyun, Damascus, and she was teaching Jews in Tiqah al-Tabarani, the Ibnihi Abu Dar Allah ibn Faris, which she heard from Ahmed ibn Abd al-Daim, who heard it from Yahya al-Thaqafi, who narrated from Abu Ali ibn al-Haddad, who narrated from Abu Nuaym al Asbahani, who narrated from its author Al-Tabarani. And only a few women attended this class. Their names are shown in public. So we're having the famous students of Shuhada bint Abi Nasr, Ahmad ibn al-Faraj al-Baghdiyya, and the names of everyone who is there, subhanAllah. And a continuation of the sum of the class as well, subhanAllah, subhanAllah. So the document shown on that page begins by stating the title of the book that was taught, then follow the name of the 14 sheikhs and sheikhas taking the class, including Zainab bint al-Kamal, their isnad to the author, the names of the students who attended the whole session, those who attended only a part of it, and the place and the date of the class. And the partial transcription of the Sama of the class of Zainab bint al-Kamal teaching this, and the names of the few women students in this class are in italic. So name of students, place of death, or the place they're associated with. Gonna have to piece together, subhanAllah, what the mess of what a class, subhanAllah, alhamdulillah. So next we go to how the Muhaddithats transmitted hadith. So we saw in an earlier chapter that the women as students got hadith and knowledge of the Sunnah through the same ways as the men, and this is also true of how, as teachers, they passed it on. First, of the narration of words. The highest way of hadith transmission is by the teacher speaking the words to the students. It is important to emphasize that less people should suppose that the women teaching hadith were less particular, less scholarly about wording, all that. Since they were women, they conveyed the words at some remove so that their students did not directly hear them speak. As always, the precedent is established through the generation of the companions. And I will begin, therefore, with examples where it is explicit that the students heard the hadith spoke to them because variations are recorded, or because the words as spoken are interpreted to clarify their meaning, or because someone saying particular words is questioned in order to clarify and confirm it. For an example, Nafi narrated from Safiya bint Abi Ubaid that she heard from Hafsa bint Omar, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, say that the Messenger of God ﷺ, is said it is not allowed for any woman who believes in God and the last day, or he said in God and his messenger, sallam, to be in mourning for a deceased for more than 3 days except for a husband. Nafi narrated from Abdullah ibn Omar that he said, Hafsa narrated to me that, and this is about a time when no one would enter upon him, sallam, that he used to pray 2 rakats when the dawn broke, and she meant when the Prophet ﷺ and the caller would call for the prayer. And Abdullah ibn Abi Sa'id al-Manzani says, Hafsa bint Omar ibn al-Khattab narrated to me, saying, the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once had a garment placed over his thighs. Abu Bakr sought permission to enter, and he allowed him while in the same state. Then Omar came with the same happening, and then the other companions came while he was in the same state. And Uthman came, sought permission, and he permitted him. Then he took his garment and put it on fully. They walked for a while, then they left. And I said, O Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr, Omar, Ali, and your other companions came, and you remained in your state without changing it. When Uthman came, you dressed fully. He said, should I not be shy from the one whom the very angels would be shy? And Salim ibn Abdullah ibn Omar narrated from Abu al-Jawra that Habiba narrated to him saying, I heard the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, had it not been a hardship for my community, the Ummah, I would have commanded them to clean their teeth at the time of every prayer when they do wudu. And Zuhri narrated from Ali ibn Hussein that Safiya, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said that I came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and spoke to him when he was in etikaf in the mosque. He stood up with me and took me to my house. On the way, two people from the Ansar met him, and she says, when they saw the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they felt shyness and stepped back. And he said, come forward, this is Safiya, my wife. And they said, we seek refuge in God, glorified as he. And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm not saying that you harbored a bad thought, but I know that the Satan runs through the body like the blood. And Qatada narrated that Abdullah ibn al-Harith ibn Nawfal narrated to me from Abdullah ibn Abbas that Muawiyah prayed Asr, then Ibn al-Zubayr stood up and prayed after it. And Muawiyah said, O Ibn Abbas, what are these two rakats? And Ibn Abbas said, it is an innovation and its doer is an innovator. And when Ibn al-Zubayr turned to them, he said, what did you say? And they said, we were speaking about this and that, and Ibn al-Zubayr said, I did not do an innovation, rather my maternal aunt, Aisha, narrated that to me. Then Muawiyah sent someone to ask Aisha, and she said, he is right. That is what Salama narrated to me. Then Muawiyah sent someone to Salama, informing her that Aisha had narrated from you such and such. And she said, she is right. One day the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, came and he prayed after the Asr. I stood up behind him and prayed. And when he finished, he said, what is the matter with you? And I said, I saw you, O Prophet of God, praying, so I prayed with you. And he said, one of my zakat collectors came, so I had been preoccupied with him. And Shabi says, whenever Masruq narrated from al-Mu'minin, Aisha, he would begin saying, narrate to me the truthful woman, the daughter of the truthful man, the one declared innocent by God, the beloved of God. And as for the companions among the women, other than the Prophet's wives, Hulayb said, the stepdaughter of the Prophet ﷺ, whose name is Zainab, narrated to me. I asked her, tell me whether the Prophet ﷺ was among the descendants of Mudar. And she said, then who else is he from other than Mudar? He was from the descendants of Nadr ibn Kinana. And about the famous long hadith about the Antichrist, one version of which is narrated by Fatima bint Qais, Amir al-Shabi says the following, noting minor variants in the different tellings of it that are known to him. I met Al-Muhriz ibn Abi Huraira, and I narrated him the hadith of Fatima bint Qais. He said, I testify of my father Abu Huraira that he narrated to me as Fatima bint Qais narrated to you. He said that the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said the Antichrist is in the direction of the east. Then I met Qasim ibn Muhammad and mentioned him the hadith of Fatima, and he said, I testify of Aisha that she narrated to me as Fatima narrated to you, except that she said both the sanctuaries of Mecca and Medina are forbidden to him. And Sufyan ibn Unayna narrated that Ubaidullah ibn Abi Yazid narrated to us, saying that his father told him, saying, I am a guest of Ayyub, whose guest was the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she narrated to me this hadith that they made special food for the Prophet ﷺ, in which there was some of the vegetables of onions and garlic, and they brought the food to him, and he did not like it, and said to the companions, eat, for I'm not like you. I fear lest I annoy my companions, meaning the angel of revelation, Jibril alayhi salam. And that precedent that we have just illustrated continued to be followed through all succeeding periods. The scholars heard the hadiths directly from their teachers, spoken by them. Hafiz ibn al-Hajar, while listing the works that he studied with Khadija bint Ibrahim al-Balakiyah, notes that the Musnad of Musaddada, if not by hearing from Al-Qasim ibn Mudhayfar, with his ijaza from Abd al-Aziz ibn Dulaf, and Zuhair bint Muhammad ibn Hadir, and Abd al-Aziz hearing from his shuhada. And it is clear that Abd al-Aziz heard from the Musnad of Musaddad directly from Shuhada, one of the renowned narrators. And Ibn Hajar has stated that Ibrahim ibn Mahmud ibn al-Khair heard Amali Abi Bakr Ahmad al-Najad from Shuhada, and that Nasir ibn Abd al-Razak ibn Abd al-Qadir, Abd al-Aziz ibn Uluf, Muhammad ibn Abi al-Badr ibn Fityan, and Ibrahim ibn Mahmud ibn al-Khair, and others heard Mashyaha Shuhada from Shuhada herself. With that here, let's just take a look here. I think we're at a good spot right here. So 169, reading to the teacher will be where we pick up in the following week then. So with that, we'll go ahead and close. Jazakallah, may Allah reward you with goodness for joining us and listening in. Please feel free, if you're listening to us now, come and join us for the Zoom meeting for reflections and regarding today's reading, inshallah. اللهم سبحانه وبحمده أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.